Hello, welcome back to school. Um, let me see. I'm looking for a timer. Oh, there it is. Okay. um, it's buried by the back seat of the desk. um, so I wanted to go through and just do like a real quick talking of my technique history. Um, just for my own benefit and for anyone who's just curious before I actually go through and start this whole thing. Um, I could like demonstrate stuff, but to be honest, I don't know if it would really um be worth my time or worth your time because um I haven't done this stuff in like 10 years. So it'd be kind of um everything would just be like nah, nah, she can't play that. She can't play that. But yeah. So I'm just gonna talk through this and kind of like see what kind of see what happens from where I was at to where obviously because I haven't played in forever, a lot of what I have worked on is virtually out the window or lying dormant somewhere in my brain, um, waiting to be reawoken. Um, but basically, because I never really had a teacher, from from the start, and a lot of my piano playing and music in general has just been reading books and hand me downs and guidance from other people and books and experimentation and research and things like that. Um, I really don't have like a real strong technique background. Like I was, let's see, like when I first started, excuse me, when I first started um learning piano or teaching myself piano, um I had a book and it had a little bit of scales in it. I also got like a book of chords in scales and it had like all the different chords and various scales, the major, minor, and like I think there's like blues scales and things. I mean, it had that stuff in there. It was very basic stuff, but because I didn't understand what all that stuff was, I didn't do it. Um, and even in my freshman year of high school, I was starting to play classical pieces of music of pretty intermediate stuff, like Beethoven and stuff. So, like, here I am working on um, Fur and it has arpeggios in at the last page. And my choir teacher in the high school, he's hearing me practice and he says, you need to be working on scales and arpeggios. Like, you need to find a teacher who will give you this stuff because you need to work on this stuff. He didn't tell me the benefits, he just said, this is something you need to work on. Um, and so I had that in the back of my mind, like all throughout my high schooling. I did, I got some tidbits on fingering for arpeggios, but nothing real, nothing real extravagant or whatnot. It's just basic, this is how you finger this particular arpeggio and whatnot. Um, so that was like 4 years of I would say intermediate. I would say really advanced, but intermediate for sure. Um, Piano music with really no scales, chords, nothing like that that I did. Um, I went to the technical school, uh, still doing a bunch of stuff on my own, still no teacher, still no chords, arpeggios, and scales, nothing like that. Um, my mentor at this time, I think he may have encouraged it a couple times. Um, but I don't know. But I do remember I did start working on that like Hanon, because I mean obviously I picked up a Hanon book because I don't know, somewhere along the lines I heard that, hey, you have to have Hanon. So I bought this Hanon book, and that's the one that I showed that's like super old. Um and so I bought the Hanon book and I started working through these exercises. Um oh, this isn't too bad. And then of course, I ran into the helping the organ tuner tune the organ in the choir balcony or whatever the whatnot. Um, so I was helping the organ, the organ tuner tune the organ, holding the keys as he's doing what he needs to do with tuning. Um, and as we're heading out, I was talking with him. It's like, yeah, I'm working on Hanon, and I'm on exercise 8 or whatever number I was at. Definitely, I know I was between 7 and 10. I just forget which one of the 3 or 4 I was on. Um, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, that'd be like 3 or 4. I think I was on at least 8 or 9. Um, and so that was when he asked me if I could play exercise 1 in the key of like A flat major, or he started randomly asking keys. I was like, no. Um and so he says, well, if you play your exercises in the different keys, you'll get like a better tonality or whatnot, uh, tactile geography of the keyboard, and um, you know, all this stuff that goes with that. Like, oh, never knew that. So then I went from like number 8 or 9 back to number 1, and all of the Hanon exercises are written out in the key of C. So I was thinking, okay, if I want to transpose these, I guess I could use the circle of fifths and go about it that way. So that was how I started to transpose them. And then I thought, well, I have to include the minor keys too, because the minor keys are equally as important as the major keys. So then that was when I started transposing into the minor keys. And then I created some kind of modulation for going through major to major and minor to minor, and then eventually switching between the major and the minor keys. Um, and that's what I was looking at in all that reading in the Hanon book. A lot of it is modulation stuff pertaining to, as I was beginning to learn the modulation stuff. So, after that, I started to work a little bit more with the scales, and I think with arpeggios, but I don't think I was doing it all that much. Um, I was doing like other odds and ends, like finger, I guess you can call them like isolation drills or whatever, where you hold down some notes and then you play other notes with various fingers, or maybe even with one finger. Um, those exercises are like in abundant everywhere. At this time, I was working on Liszt. I was working through it was like the first volume of his technical exercises. I wasn't going through every little thing, but I was just kind of going through picking out things that I could actually utilize and start to kind of see and apply. So like I would do like the finger drills or the finger isolations. I think I did some of the chords, and then I did some of the like some of the prep exercises for scales. Um as I remember doing some of those like with the double 2 note, 3 note, 4 note exercises. Um and so then I was working on some other books, just random stuff I've got lying around in my library. I think another book I was working through was Lecheski's Piano Technique or something like that. Um, there's a couple books of his that I have, and those I think were more. I think he had yeah, he's got like those finger isolation things, but he also has like independent finger drills things. I really don't remember which one of those things I worked on, but yeah. Um so then the other thing I did was, oh gosh, stretching exercises. Um I did some stretching exercises from a big 2 volume book I picked up from somewhere, I don't know where. Probably from Amazon or something, I don't know. Um but I picked up uh it was basically a big old book of finger exercise. Like the first book is like all finger exercises, and the other book is like all different scales and all that stuff. Um so I started working through, in the front of the book there was some stretching exercises where you're basically you hold down a note with your thumb and then you stretch your hand an octave, which I think that's a third, I could be wrong, and then you switch from the third finger to the second finger, and it's basically stretching between the thumb and the various fingers. And gradually you're expanding, you're just stretching out the ligaments and stuff. Um and then there are some other ones that dealt with like holding chords with the unique hand position where you would get stretching between the fingers, which is kind of fun. Um, I like I like those. I think once I got a hang of them, I pretty much did those like every day. Um, and then I would like move on to like the list or the Lecheski or whatever, exercise I was working through. And I would spend like, literally, I would spend like 2 hours on technique. Um, I at one point was working with a lady, and I was talking with her about, I was doing all this, finger drill stuff or whatever, technical stuff. And I was telling her, yeah, it's like spending 2 hours on it. She's like, you don't need to spend that much time on that stuff. You don't need to do that stuff. It's like, oh, okay. So I like literally stopped. Meanwhile, my mentor was like, hey, why aren't you doing your finger stuff? It's like, oh, my teacher says I don't have to. He's like, what? um yeah, really kind of interesting things. Yeah. So to actually get back into that was really hard. um when I was going to university, um obviously for auditions you have to play some element of technique to kind of demonstrate to see, well, where are you at? Um, so yeah, so I was like, well, okay, I'm gonna have to really work on learning these scales and the arpeggios and the chords and all this stuff. So that was when I started to work on that a little bit more seriously for auditions, using metronome and things like that. Of course, beforehand, before this, I was also using metronome. Um, but when I went to university, that was probably the first time that I really had a teacher, um, and working with me with technique. Like, I wouldn't say solely technique, but as far as having someone actually try to help me through the regime of whatever it is he was doing. So, what we would do for technique, we would start off with like a measure of quarto finger drill book or whatever, the rational principles of pianoforte technique, I think is what it was. Um, but we would start off, we would do a measure of that. Um, it's probably section 2, part E or something like that. I don't know. Um, but yeah. But we didn't do any of the finger holding independent stuff, like where you had to hold down the keys. We didn't do those. But we did do the 5-finger note patterns, and there was a bunch of them. We would just do one measure a week, and obviously, it had repetitions, so you could repeat it as many times as your little heart had content to do so. So we did that. Then after we did the finger drills. Oh, one thing I want to mention about the finger drills. With the quarto. For some unknown reason, I don't know why, but he says, lift your fingers. I want you to knock the tiles out of the ceiling. Yeah. I'm thinking, why, what? I don't understand. And this is coming from the same guy that was asking me to lift my hand to the piano that I totally had no concept of. So obviously, if I couldn't lift my hand to the piano, what makes them think I can lift my finger to strike a key? I don't know. But some of this stuff is very memorable, like lifting your fingers to the point of knocking tiles off the ceiling. But we did the quarto, and then after we did the quarto, we would move on to the scales. We would do the octaves, the parallel octaves, up 4 octaves on the keyboard, up and down. Then we'd do the thirds, and we'd do the sixes, and we'd do the tens, all 4 octaves, ascending and descending on the keyboard. And then after that, we would do chords. So we would do the different chord positions of like the tonic for whatever key we're working in. So like we're in the key of C major, we would do the C chord in its inversions. And this was, I think, what he was trying to do with like the wrist rotation. So like from what I understand, after more research and figuring this stuff out, when you strike a chord on the piano or strike any on the piano, my voice is dry. You strike a note, your wrist goes down, and you're supposed to move your wrist out away from your body and roll it up to remove your hand from the piano keyboard. So essentially what you're doing is you're making these circles. And from what I understand, as you're first learning this, dropping down with the hand and going out towards the pinky and then rolling up towards the thumb to lift the hand and whatnot, or even to play those fingers, when you're first learning this, apparently you have to do like really big, exaggerated movements. And I never got it. I did not get it. And I still don't know if I really get it. But apparently it's supposed to help make like rich, lush, I want to say mellow, but rich, lush, dark, round tones for playing these chords. And so, yeah, um, we would do that, and then after the chords, we did the arpeggios, and I never really got these either because I just didn't. I scales and arpeggios, I don't know. I couldn't move my thumb fast enough, or I was tense, or what, I don't know. But I wasn't getting any of it. Um and so we did the arpeggios up and down the keyboard 4 octaves. Well, luckily we didn't do those in thirds and tens and sixes and stuff. That'd just be like a huge nightmare. Um but it can be done. I think it's in the mastering scales and arpeggio books. I think it is in there with third, sixth, and stuff like that. Um and then after we did the arpeggios, we did the scales in double octaves. So you'd be playing 2 notes with your left hand, 2 notes with your right hand, 8 tones apart. And so you'd be playing these up and down the keyboard 4 octaves. And the whole thing on this was to, like, I guess, like, keep the wrist loose, because you can't play octaves if you don't have a loose wrist and forearm and stuff. But also I think it might have something to do with, like, the attack and staccato playing or something. I don't know. Like I said, all this stuff was new, and I'd not, I tried to catch what I could, but it was just way, way too much. We also did 1 key a week. So for me, like, it was a little bit more challenging, because I felt like as I was getting a hang of 1 key area, we moved on to the next key area, and it's like crap. So I just found it really hard in that way of just sticking to 1 key a week. I would have much rather work through a couple different techniques, working through all the keys, and then slowly adding other techniques or exchanging other techniques, you know. But I don't know. So let me see. I think that was pretty much all we did for technique. Um I know, like, for me, he was one time, this is towards the end of our studies at university. We were talking about chord progressions or something, and I told him, well, I never learned that stuff. So he, like, wanted me to learn these chord progressions, which is like a whole new thing. It's like, okay. Um, so yeah. He, I don't, I don't know. Stuff at university is kind of a hit and miss. Um, I think we both learned a lot from it, like, both of ourselves and of other people, because he didn't real I don't think he fully realized just how little, like, musical training I'd had, like, with a teacher. That everything's just kind of, like, thrown together. Um, I'm sure if he had known that, he may have actually, like, says, I don't know, like, I don't know, I want to work with you outside of school before you enroll or something. I don't know. Um, but yeah. So university was what it was, but I did learn some stuff. I'm not saying it was all a waste of time or anything. Um, I think I learned more about, like, myself, which is probably more important than learning about musical aspects, but yeah, musical aspects were learned too. Um, but yeah, so um I did a little bit of chord progressions, like learning about those. Um and then when I left university, things were kind of at a huge downward trend, and I really wasn't into doing much of anything. Um, and so that was kind of like when everything I just stopped playing altogether. Like I just stopped doing everything, which, yeah. Um, so and now here I am trying. I'm about to pick everything back up again. Well, maybe not everything, but we'll see what happens. Um, I was gonna say I don't know how like these will. I mean, obviously scales transfer over to organ. And then I don't know because it says it is for the piano, and a lot of my books are for piano. I don't know if like organ has like other technique like specific to organ. I don't know. Um so yeah. Um I want to mention while I was thinking back on university, one of the things we did that I really did enjoy was every once in a while um he would play a subject from the Voltempio Clivia book 1, and we would have to sing the subject. And some of us were really good, some of us, you know, hit and miss. Um, but I really like that. I really, really like that. I don't think we didn't do that a lot because, I mean, when we all met as like a piano class or whatever, um, there were, students getting ready for performances and stuff like that. And so we had to sit and listen to them and, all that stuff. Um, but yeah, having to sing the preludes, or not the preludes, but the fugal subjects of the Bach was really, really nice. And I really, really like that. Um, so maybe I don't know if I'll do that myself, but I don't know. Um, I'll have to write out the subjects, I guess, and see how that goes. But yeah, that's just one of those things that I remember um about working with them at the university, and that was one thing that I really, really did like a lot. Um, but yeah, technical stuff. Eh, at the audition, he said he was gonna like spend a lot of time with technique on me, but I don't think he really did that. I don't. I don't know. I don't know. It is what it is. I did learn some stuff. Um, I just have to figure out how to apply it and all that other stuff. So, that is the short end and long end of my piano technique, which really there isn't much to talk about because I didn't really go through it as much as I should have. Um, if I had listened to my freshman choir teacher and looked at getting a piano teacher, legitimate piano teacher, things may have been different. Um, but yeah, and as I say, not that this is a thing about piano teachers, but even that is just really, really just I don't want to say unstandardized, but unstandardized. Like there's no like method of piano teaching. Like pretty much anyone can teach piano, but if you don't have a competent piano teacher or a competent teacher who knows what they're doing, um, it's kind of like, uh, okay, and yeah, I don't know. But yeah, so that is that. So I will. I don't know. I need to get ready for choir and do all that stuff. It's really yucky outside right now, but I need to get ready for choir. When I get back, I'll probably play around with some of the technique stuff and see what happens. Um, let's see. I still have to do arithmetic with the sevens and or with the eights, sevens, and eights. So I got to keep on top of that because tomorrow we start working back on arithmetic again. I think we're starting with the fourths. Like we're starting with the fractions of the fourths, so that'll be interesting to see what happens. Okay, so if you want to like, share, and subscribe, go ahead. Okay, don't forget to ring that notification bell.